This afternoon on the marketplace, inflation shoots up to 12.2%, the highest since the economy was rebased in August 2019. We'll hear from the government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobina-Ene. Also in the bulletin, poultry farmers struggle to meet demand for feed ahead of Christmas. We find out how this could impact the price of a live bird as demand shoots up across the country in the festive season. Also, we are picking up information that a number of bookings for Christmas have been cancelled across various hotels following the announcement of the mandatory vaccination directive at the Ghana airport. We'll hear from the president of the Hotels Association on whether or not this must be a situation of concern. We have all these stories and more coming up shortly. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome. The Bank of Ghana reminds banks and other financial institutions to be mindful of threats to financial services, including cybersecurity and anti-money laundering, as Société Générale launches its Digital Innovation Center dubbed Innovation Hub.
The central bank urged banks to be wary of risk that could pose a challenge to the digital financial services drive. It, however, commended Société Générale for extending access to digital financial services for its customers. Here is the head of FinTech and Innovation at the Bank of Ghana, Kwame OPPONG.
Enabling regulation for such relationships, and congratulate Société Générale once again for seeing it fit to find these technology partners as complementary partners in our efforts to enhance inclusion and provide better service outcomes for the growing tech-savvy consumers. I will, however, take this opportunity to remind you to factor in issues of cybersecurity, anti-money laundering, combating the financing of terrorism, and the proliferation of firearms, as well as, of course, consumer protection, to ensure that your innovations are responsible and sustainable. I wish you the very best in this endeavor and assure you of Bank of Ghana's continued support in this laudable project.
Managing Director of Société Générale Hakeem Ozani said his outfit will continue to play a lead role in the banking industry, hence its decision to launch the Innovation Hub that will provide customer-centric services.
Innovation Hub has already begun forming key strategic partnerships with players in the digital and innovative ecosystem, both locally and internationally, namely MEST, Ghana Tech Lab, OZ, Inclusive Tech, to name just but a few. Beyond the banking and payment sphere, the Innovation Hub is open to any idea, initiative, innovation that serves the interests of the Ghanaian economy, more particularly if they contain some dimension such as sustainable development, fight against global warming, or social and environmental responsibility. I hope that SG Ghana Innovation Hub will live up to our ambitions, and I would say our dreams.
The Innovation Hub will enable customers connect with their partners within the digital ecosystem. It repositions Société Générale as the bank of choice in the digital financial services industry.
Now, we are barely a week away from Christmas, and already there are reports of poultry farmers struggling to meet the demand for feed needed for birds across the country. Joy Business is learning that the Poultry Farmers Association is racing to acquire machinery that will help scale up production to meet the demand for feed ahead of the Yuletide. But how could this impact the sale of chicken this festive season? Well, Michael Nyako Ampem owns one of the leading poultry farms in the Greater Accra region, and he joins us via Zoom. Michael, we're grateful that you could join us. How bad is the feed shortage from where you sit?
Thank you very much. The feed, around this time, generally feed runs out, but we're getting it. We are getting feed. It's not the way we want it, but there's a bit of shortage in the system, but not as bad as one would expect.
But of course, there is going to be the likelihood of it impacting the capacity to produce this festive season.
No. What was actually the problem was that the day-old chicks delayed, the arrival of day-old chicks delayed due to the avian influenza. So it made getting birds ready for the market a bit slow. But generally, it picked up, and now we have enough birds in the system to feed consumers.
I think, if you could help us draw the line between the availability of birds and as well the availability of enough feed, to support the production of, these birds, especially when they're also concerned about the likelihood of the prices being impacted in this nature.
Okay, so this is it. For the feed, you need the feed to be able to, produce the birds, and then the birds are on a different scale. That is when the birds come in and you have to raise them. But you need a combination of the feed, the vaccines, and the drugs to raise the birds. The feed is available, except that because of the sometimes unavailability of the raw materials and the high cost of the raw materials, sometimes it tends to run out of the system. However, there is feed. I must confess, there is feed. It may not be available as freely as one would want it, but there is feed for the.
But of
brothers.
course, that's where the problem lies. That's where the problem lies with so many poultry farmers as we're gathering here and across the country. The feed is available, but the cost related to procuring these feeds remains a challenge for most of these poultry farmers. Yes,
because the raw materials have been very stubborn. The prices they have been quite stubborn, coming down. They went up and it's refused to come down. So it's a bit difficult for the farmers not to pass on the prices or the extra costs on to the consumers. So what I keep saying is that as for prices of the product, which is the chicken, it will go up somewhat, but the increase will not be too much because consumers also have a way of determining what they can buy and what they cannot buy. So if the farmers increase it too much beyond a certain point, the consumers will not buy. So there's going to be a burden sharing, and once we share the burden, the farmers will take some, and then the consumers will also take a bit. So that's what's actually going to happen. But as for increase in prices, yes, there will be an increase in price.
Michael, we're grateful that you could join us. We can now bring in the president of the Ghana National Association of Poultry Farmers, Victor OPPONG, ADJEI, who joins us via phone, actually. We're grateful, sir, that you could join us. Help us clarify this matter. Is there a shortage of feed on a national scale when it comes to matters of the cost involved? Hello, Mr. President. I think the line is a bit jerky, but if you could hear me, we're wondering if you could clarify for us the state of the production and distribution of feed on a national scale as we speak. Hello, Mr. President. We'll try and raise the president back on the line, but of course, this is a story that we're picking. Joy business, the fact that poultry farmers across the country are having matters regarding to the cost of feed. The president of the National Poultry Farmers Association joins us once again this time around. We hope it works. We're grateful that you could join us, sir. As I was asking, is a shortage of feed a national issue as we speak?
Yes, it started early this year, and it's still continuing. Previously, the inputs were not even available. But now we have some, but still prices are very high. So it's very difficult. Since January up to now, we've been finding it difficult to get feed for the birds.
And what engagement are there with the Ministry of Agriculture to ramp up production and distribution of feed?
Oh, we've had a lot of engagement with the ministry, series of meetings. But the challenge was that, the feed is basically about maize, soya, and wheat bran. And we allowed the neighboring countries to come and buy all the maize from here. And it came to a time that we were not even getting maize for the birds. We've had a series of meetings with the ministry, and still the situation has not changed very much.
Well, we do know that the poultry sector has had some dark times this year, regards to the bird flu. But help us understand how this could impact your preparedness as poultry farmers ahead of the festive season.
Well, we know that every year we use live birds for the festive season. So despite the challenges that we have, we still have some supply for the public. So the public, except that the prices will be up because the feed input, especially the maize, has gone up over 250%. So definitely the prices of birds will go up.
So help me draw the line, paint a picture for us. When you say the prices of birds, live birds will go up, to what percentage? And I mean, what particular price are we looking at? From 60 cedis per broiler to 70 cedis. What exactly are we projecting here?
The broiler would depend on the size, but the layer, we are starting from 35 cedis, from 35 up. But the broiler, it will depend on the size of the broiler.
So by what percentage, if we are to juxtapose this to last year?
Oh, last year we sold between 25 to 30 cedis. So you see the difference is not much. Although our feed inputs have gone up over 50%, the difference is not much. Just five cedis different.
But indeed, it could impact the pockets of some, lower income, consumers who might want to have a chicken for themselves this Christmas. But finally, before we let you go, help us understand the state of the poultry sector as we speak now, aside matters regarding the cost of feed.
Well, the poultry is all about the feed. So if you have challenge with the feed, it affects the whole industry. Because poultry is about feeding the birds. You bring the day-old chick, you'll be feeding it up to lay point. So if you don't have the feed, you don't have the poultry. And the feed is basically about the maize, which is about 60% of the input. Then the soya, about 15-20%, and the remaining being the wheat bran and other additives, small additives. So if you don't have the feed, you don't have the poultry. That is why this year we've had challenges because the maize were not available, soya prices went up, wheat bran from 20 cedis, it went to 40 cedis. So if the feed input goes up, it affects the industry.
Indeed, and we shall follow this up to see how this fares. We're grateful that you could join us, President of the Ghana National Association of Poultry Farmers, Victor Oppong ADJEI. The takeout here is that the price of feed has shot up by almost 250%, which would impact the prices of live birds this Christmas. But speaking of prices, the month of November recorded the highest rate of inflation of 12.2% since the rebasing of Ghana's economy in 2019. This indicates that prices of goods and services witnessed upward adjustments during the period. Housing, water and electricity once again topped the list of factors that contributed to the rate of increment. According to the government statistician, food inflation also experienced some increment over the period. Take a listen to him.
CPI for the month of November 2021 stood at 135.2 indices relative to 120.4 indices that was recorded for the same time, November 2020. This culminating in an inflation figure of 12.2% for the month of November 2021. This means that prices of goods and services over the one-year period, that is November 2020 and November 2021, have gone up by 12.2%. This 12.2% is a 1.2 percentage higher inflation rate relative to what was recorded on a year-on-year basis for the month of October 2021, which stood at 11.0%. On a month-on-month basis, between October 2021 and November 2021, prices of goods and services went up by 1.4 percentage points, indicating that between these 2 months, that is October and November 2021, prices of goods and services went up by 1.4%. From a food and a non-food percentage point, we see food food dominating by 13.1% relative to non-food 11.6%, indicating a 1.5 percentage point between food inflation and non-food inflation. On a month-on-month basis, food inflation equally records a higher rate of inflation relative to non-food inflation, indicating a 1.3 percentage point, specifically with food inflation month-on-month 2.1% and non-food inflation month-on-month 0.8%. Housing and transport continue to record the highest rate of inflation as housing, water, electricity, and gas recorded 20.5% and transport 16.0%. Contribution of food and non-alcoholic beverages to overall inflation has regained an upward trend as it increased from 44.9% to 47.2% at its contribution to overall inflation between the month of October and November 2021. The variation between locally produced items and imported items has assumed a wider gap as locally produced items stood at 13.0% and imported items 9.8% for the month of November 2021.
The rising inflation is expected to push interest rates and consequently costs of borrowing up in the coming weeks. You're still watching the marketplace, and of course, still to come in the bulletin, we are picking up information that a number of bookings for Christmas have been cancelled following the announcement of the mandatory vaccination directive at the Kotoka International Airport. We'll hear from the president of the Hotels Association, Dr. Edward Akanyamike, on whether or not there is cause for alarm. Do stay for more. Now, we're picking information that a number of bookings for Christmas have been cancelled following the announcement of the mandatory vaccination directive at the international airport. Let's bring in President of the Hotels Association, Dr. Edward Akanyamike, on this developing story. We're grateful, sir, that you could join us. Explain to us the scale of impacts the vaccination mandate is having on the hotels industry just a few days, after we did hear of this new directive at the Kotoka International Airport.
Well, thank you very much, Charles, for the opportunity. Let me put it this way. The measures that the Ghana is putting in place to check the spread of the Omicron virus, it's similar to what other countries are doing. The emphasis or focus is on tightening the entry into the country. And so certainly it will affect international visits into the country and consequently on occupancy. I must say that we are yet to get the exact figures involved. But we also have to look at it from the perspective of the domestic tourism, which we have been preaching or talking about in recent times. Because indeed, immediately the WHO announced the detection of the Omicron virus, we anticipated that such cancellations will happen. We anticipated that these are the challenges that we will be facing. Albeit, we also know that we have some hardcore tourists who may have planned far ahead of this and who still want to take that bold step of still coming to the country, going by all the protocols that have been put in place. So we are placing some faith and hope in that. But the domestic tourism promotion is also something that a lot of the operators are placing emphasis on. So all things being equal, I don't believe that in this short term, the impact on the industry will be as grave as we are anticipating.
Well, but of course, this is a peak season actually for the hotels industry. December, the month of December, when we're seeing most of these international travelers troop into the country to have a feel of tourism here. But we now do have the vaccine mandate, and as you rightly stated, it's emanating in some cancellations. But help us appreciate the concerns of industry players on this vaccine mandate, because mind you, we're not having vaccine mandates across the world. is not in the United States, actually, because you need verification of COVID vaccination, the card. If you don't have that, you should have a negative PCR test. You're not mandated, you won't be subjected to, having to take a dose of a vaccine at the airport. This is a unique situation here in Ghana. So what exactly are industry players telling you as president of the Hotels Association?
Well, we also need to balance health with business as well. Much as we want to do business and take advantage of the tide, we don't have to do that at the expense of our health. Because if we all end up dying from the virus, we wouldn't have really any business to talk about. Having said that, we appreciate what the health service and indeed the government is doing with regards to controlling the entrance into the country with regards to the virus. And for us, it is something that we expected immediately the Omicron was announced. It is something that we knew that the government would go that far because of our experience over the past 2 years.
All right.
And indeed, we continue to put our protocols and measures in place. So we are not really concerned to the extent that we will have healthy people entering into our country to enjoy the services that we provide, rather to plead for the borders to be loose and people to enter and create health challenges for us.
All right, great. But of course, we're picking from your submission that there's going to be much focus on domestic tourism as against the over-reliance in recent past on international travelers. How are you going to ensure the sustainability of this direction?
Well, we have started with a lot of collaborations going on. The various trade associations, the various business in the tourism chain are now coming together to form all kinds of partnerships to ensure that the Ghanaian or the people in the country take some interest in domestic tourism, and also to ensure that the various programs that the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, and indeed the Ghana Tourism Authority has put in place with regards to the December Engage. That's not to say that we are discouraging any international business, but people in Ghana can also enjoy the December Engage, much as the international visitors will also enjoy it. So we are also pushing and focusing on these events that is being promoted for the Ghanaian to also enjoy it. And then those who are able to join us from outside, why not? We'll all enjoy it in good health. So, and of course, the e-marketing is going on. There's so much online presence, social media presence. The various tourism trade associations are using all those channels to ensure that the people move around, of course, observing the protocols so that we all stay alive and enjoy the Christmas.
All right, just before I let you go, Dr. ADJEI, the elephant in the room has to do with the cost involved in accessing the hotels industry in Ghana. Domestic travelers, domestic tourists often raise this matter. Now we're in the festive season, and you're the president of the association. Any assurance related to cost? Are we going to be seeing discounts this time around in this festive season at various hotels?
Charles, I have always said that, you see, hotels in Ghana range from budgets, 1-star, 2-star to 5-star hotel.
Yes.
Let's cut our quotes according to our sizes. Now, if
here's a case where you want to bring in more domestic, consumers to have a feel of the products that you have.
I was coming to that point, but first of all, let's appreciate that we have various hotel categories for various pockets.
Okay.
Okay, that needs to be, because we have very good budget 1-star and 2-star facilities in the country, spread across the country, which domestic tourists can take advantage of. Now, that aside, we also want to assure our patrons and customers that, see, don't always focus on the rack rates. Don't always focus on what you see on the websites or even at the hotels. Talk to the hotels. Talk to the hotels. If you have a number of people who are visiting a particular hotel, call them and talk to them and arrange something. They will give you a good package. Okay? The rates are not cast in stone. Based on their occupancy, based on the situation, they can give good packages to our patrons. So we should not stop at the rate we see on the websites or being advertised. Let's talk to the hotels, and they will give us something that I believe we'll appreciate, and that will fit our pockets as well.
You've been diplomatic with the answer, but of course we appreciate you, Dr. Edward Akanyamike, the president of the Hotels Association. That's how we end this edition of Marketplace. Of course, for more news, please log on to myjoyonline.com. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of our bulletins.